Welcome to Hack Your Happiness.
Your happiness and success will be significantly advanced by being confident but uncertain. I am confident all the time, and I don't know anything for certain.
Hack Your Happiness is a podcast designed to bring you the behind the scenes of what brings iconic individuals happiness, plus their life hacks.
I'm Mercedes.
And I'm Anastasia.
Today we are speaking with Dr. Ellen Langer.
I had A's in everything. I was one of these obnoxiously good students. So it could have been anything, and I probably would have been happy no matter what. You know, there are some people who seem not to be happy no matter what happens to them. Some who look to the outside world to see if they should be happy or not. And then people like me who mark the edge of the optimism continuum.
Dr. Ellen Langer.
Ellen Langer.
Ellen Langer.
Mother of Mindfulness, Dr. Ellen Langer.
Harvard psychology professor.
The positive psychology movement.
Groundbreaking research.
Leading pioneers in the mind-body connection.
You have done some amazing studies. Which one did you think is your favorite?
That was probably the beginning of all of it for me. I mean, it's one thing, you know, when someone says they're happier, but living longer.
Tell us about the scarcity mindset. What is it and why is it harmful?
Well, things are neither scarce nor plentiful. Things are nothing.
Am I looking more on the positive side? Do I want to highlight the good aspects of this individual? I mean, there's a flip side to everything.
Exactly.
People would not intentionally do stupid, awful things. If we only see it in this negative light, we're being mindless.
Welcome to Hack Your Happiness. Welcome, Dr. Langer.
My pleasure.
Thank you. And you are an iconic and world-renowned professor and psychologist. So tell us a bit about yourself and your backstory. How did you get to where you are today, and how did you decide to pursue the path that you're on?
I have no idea, but I'll guess. You know, I mean, I'm pretty old, so that the backstory can be a very long story. So let me just give you a few points. First, I'm extraordinarily fortunate. My parents were very, very nurturing. And because they were so supportive, it allowed me to try out all sorts of things. If the question is really how did I become a psychologist, I think when I was in college, I was a chemistry major. And I was a good student, but I would emerge from the lab a different color every day. And I was practicing Jewish chemistry, which was a little is good, a little more isn't bad, which is not the way you want to play with chemistry. At any rate, I was taking chemistry because I was going to go to medical school. And then it turned out I was going to get married soon. I was married when I was very young. And I thought I might not finish medical school, so let me start taking some liberal arts courses. And I took a course with Phil Zimbardo, who was spectacular. He was so dynamic that it felt like this was a natural for me. They asked us to choose a major, and at that point I had A's in everything. I was one of these obnoxiously good students. So it could have been anything, and I probably would have been happy no matter what. You know, there are some people who seem not to be happy no matter what happens to them. Some who look to the outside world to see if they should be happy or not. And then people like me who mark the edge of the optimism continuum. So I'm going to be happy. It doesn't matter. You know, when I'm in a relationship, I don't have to decide where we're going to eat, what movie we're going to see, what friends. You know, you can decide because I'm going to have a good time regardless. But Zimbardo was so spectacular that, and they asked the next day to choose a major. I chose psychology, and the rest is history, as they say.
That's amazing. I think it's so powerful that, things happen by chance. We start exploring different mediums, different classes, different courses.
Oh, yeah. I think that the chance aspect is so far greater than people realize. And let me tell you another. So I was now going to apply to graduate school, and I applied to Yale, and I received a letter from them saying that I was on the waiting list. Okay, so now I was at this meeting, my first conference, and I see somebody with a Yale tag on, name tag, and I went over to him and I said, what does it mean to be on the waiting list? And he said it means they believe you can do the work, but they don't have the money to support you. I said, oh, great. Now, this was a chance thing, right? Had I not been at that conference, had I not seen this guy, had I not had the nerve to ask him, who knows what would have happened? Probably something else that was good. But so then what I did was I wrote a letter to the powers that be at Yale, and I said, I will take some jobs and, at least at the beginning will support myself and whatever. And they were persuaded. And I just did that for one semester, and then they started to pay my way.
That's amazing. I love how, you really wanted to study at Yale, and this is something that you were passionate about. You saw an opportunity and you took it. And I think a lot of people would have talked themselves, out of approaching this person or out of writing a letter to Yale.
But I think along those lines, we need to understand that people feel good when they do nice things. And so you shouldn't be shy about asking, but you should be grateful and sweet. And if I ask somebody, will you do my income taxes for me? Why should anyone say yes? But if my request is specific, I'm having trouble with the third question, can you help me with it? Most people will say yes, and it turns out that the helper always feels big, smart, right? Generous. So in some way, by asking these questions, you're almost doing the other person a favor as well.
There's never a downside to asking a question.
Exactly, and I really like that. We do feel so good when we see someone else benefit from our actions, and so giving people that opportunity really allows for both parties to benefit. And so in today's world, I think there can be different understandings and definitions of the word mindfulness, which you've done a lot of work around. What is your definition of mindfulness, and how did you cultivate this definition?
Okay, well, so first of all, I've been studying this for well before the two of you were born. All right, so for the last 50 years. It's a long time. So it's almost surprising to me that there are still people who don't know. Everybody knows the word, and the word is so overused. Last year, the year before, I was giving a lecture at a conference in Chicago. After my talk, I walked around the block, and there was a restaurant, the Mindful Burger. So that word is out there. But my definition is very different. When lots of people hear the word mindfulness, they think of meditation. Now, meditation is wonderful, but it's very different. Meditation is a practice that you engage in, hopefully to result in post-meditative mindfulness. Mindfulness, as we study it, is immediate. It's a very simple process of noticing. Now, the problem is most people don't know that they're mindless. When you're not there to know you're not there. And close to 50 years of research says, sadly, almost all of us are mindless almost all of the time. So people think that they're noticing, but they're not. Now, there are two ways to become mindful. One is top-down, and I'll explain what that is. The other is bottom-up. So top-down, if you recognize, and you're young enough to maybe learn this more quickly than your parents and grandparents, but if you recognize that everything is always changing, everything looks different from different perspectives, uncertainty is the rule, not the exception. Nobody knows. Now, when you know you don't know, then you pay attention, right? It's just that simple. I mean, if you were going to come visit me now, you'd walk in the house, you would know you've never been here before, you'd pay attention to the things that you saw. If it was your 300th visit, you'd probably stop noticing, although many of the things in the house might be quite different. All right, so when you're uncertain, you sit up and pay attention. People are afraid of uncertainty because they mistakenly think they should know. You can't know. Again, if everything is changing all the time, how can you know? All right. So if you simply adopt the understanding that you don't know, you'll naturally be more mindful. The other way, that's top down. I don't know, so here I'm present. The other way is bottom up. So now we have to persuade you that you don't know. So look around your house, notice 3 new things. Walk outside, notice 3 new things. Look at your friend, somebody you've been working with for all these podcasts. Notice 3 new things about her. And each time you do this, you say, wow, I thought I knew her, I thought I knew the house, I thought I knew the street, but no, since it's always changing, you're always going to notice the new things. It's interesting because schools teach us to be mindless. Schools give us absolute facts. So one of the things when I give lectures on this that I often start with this to show everybody how mindless they are. I simply ask them, how much is 1 plus 1? Okay, so one of you tell me, how much is 1 plus 1?
I think 2.
Yeah, the common answer would be 2.
That's right, yeah. But now you're smart enough to know maybe that's not the right answer, right? Because otherwise, why would I talk about it? Okay, so if you're using a base 10 number system, 1 plus 1 is 2. Now, you probably don't know different number systems, but there are. If you use a base 2 number system, 1 plus 1 is written as 10. Okay, who cares about a number system? If you take 1 wad of chewing gum and you add 1 wad of chewing gum, 1 plus 1 is 1. You take 1 pile of laundry, you add 1 pile of laundry, 1 plus 1 is 1. You take 1 cloud and you add 1 cloud. Oh my gosh, in the real world, it probably doesn't equal 2 as often as it does. Now, think about it. Next time somebody asks you, I can't imagine anybody is going to, but if someone were to ask you, how much is 1 plus 1? You wouldn't mindlessly blurt out 2. All of a sudden you'd have choices. When you're mindless, you don't have any choices. Now you'd say, well, I could say 1, 2, 10. Do I want to be a smart ass? Yeah, maybe I'll just say 1 plus 1 is 1, because they probably don't understand that, and so on. Okay, when you're mindless, you're like a robot. Robots don't have choices. When you're mindful, you have choices. When you recognize that you don't know and everything is possible, there's no reason not to sit up and pay attention.
Your listening truly means the entire world to Anastasia and I, and we would love to invite you to join the Happiness family, which is completely free, and that way you'll never miss another episode of Hack Your Happiness. You can join the family by following this podcast on whichever podcast listening platform you're on now. That is truly so beautiful, because you know what? So many teenagers, we live in this world of uncertainty, and we're so, I think a lot of peers of ours would be like, oh, I'm excited to get older, graduate high school, know where I'm going to go for college, know what I'm going to do for a job, know who I'm going to be friends with in 10 or 15 years. But the reality is, like you said there, uncertainty is the rule. Everything is.
Yeah, but you say what happens is if people think you're supposed to know, and that adult is acting like they do know, what a lot of people, not just the young, my friends of my age, pretend, or they don't engage in the first place, because if I'm supposed to know and I don't know, then I get scared. But what people need to do is, instead of making a personal attribution for not knowing, which would be, I don't know, but I think it's knowable and you might know, you have to make a universal attribution for not knowing. I don't know, you don't know, nobody knows. So that person who's scaring you, who's acting like they know and you're an idiot, feel sorry for them because they're being mindless. They probably think 1 plus 1 is always 2.
Exactly. I think it's about like always being, really malleable to our situation, and going with the flow, almost in a sense of like being really present and enjoying the moment, even if we don't know what is lying ahead.
Well, but you see, you don't want to know. So let me give you an example. People think that they want to have perfection. All right. You can either do something imperfectly mindfully or perfectly mindlessly. Let me give you an example. So remember you're a little kid and you're in the elevator and you try to press that button and you can't reach it. And then your mother, father, or some adult picks you up and you press it. And the next time you're in the elevator, you're getting a little closer. Eventually, yes, you're able to hit that button. After that, when was the last time you were excited about being in an elevator?
Oh, not for a while.
That's the point, that once we know it, it doesn't do anything for us. And so all the things we're afraid of, things, the not knowing, the seeking perfection, are the very things that get us into trouble. What we want to do is recognize that it's the attempting to do it that's fun. If you think you always want to win, play tic-tac-toe against a 5-year-old. You'll always win. against most 5-year-olds. I'm sure there's some 5-year-old out there who's figured it out.
Some prodigy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mindfulness
Exactly.
is so powerful, and I think it's like that sense of like perspective, and almost like you mentioned, like a childlike wonder of being like, I don't know everything.
Being okay with not knowing, being okay with the uncertainty.
Totally.
So when your teachers give you facts, you need, to know that, yeah, most of the time, not all of the time. So my life changed many years ago. I was at a horse event, and this man asked me would I watch his horse for him because he's going to get his horse a hot dog. A hot dog? What, is he kidding? Horses don't eat meat. So I say, to be nice, sure, I'll watch your horse for you. He goes, gets the hot dog, comes back, gave it to the horse, and the horse ate it. So all of our facts are true sometimes. Now, when you think it's true all of the time, again, you don't pay any attention. When it's true sometimes, you want to see, is this one of those times where it is true? So whenever your teachers ask you a question, or ask a question in class, and someone gives an answer, you should be thinking what other things are also correct answers to that. There are always multiple answers. And if we learn to see that everything can be understood in so many different ways, everything would change for us. For one thing, we would have more respect for each other. Because if the two of you are having a conversation about how much is 1 and 1, and you say it's 2, and you say it's 1, and you start fighting, if you recognize that anything can be understood in many ways, then, so let's say Mercedes said 1, and you say, what, is she crazy? Instead of that, now you would say, Mercedes, how did you get that answer? And she'd say, you take 1 wad of chewing gum, you add 1 wad of chewing gum, and it's 1. Okay, so the bottom line there, very, very important, is that people's behavior makes sense, or else they wouldn't do it. And so every time we're being unkind, every time we're being judgmental about other people, we're being mindless. And if instead we said, why would they say or do that strange thing? We'll come up with answers. So it turns out, people don't realize this, that for every single negative behavior, there's an equally strong but oppositely valenced alternative. For every negative, there's a positive. So let me give you an example. So you might not like me because I'm inconsistent. Okay. Well, what's the positive version of that? I'm flexible. I don't like you because you're gullible. What's the positive version of that? Being trusting. I can't stand you because you're so impulsive. What's the positive version of that? Spontaneous. All right? So now, you wouldn't want to change me. You might not want me to be inconsistent, but when you realize it's because I'm flexible, then you say, yeah, that's very nice. I like this person.
Yeah, it's interesting because we all, it's what we choose to focus on. Is this person inconsistent, or are they really, balanced and well-rounded and focused? There's always
Totally.
some positive way we
and
can shift
it's
our
all
mindset.
about perspectives again. It's like looking, am I
Yes.
looking more on the positive side? Do I want to highlight the good aspects of this individual? Or is there's a flip side to everything.
Exactly.
And I think focusing on that positive.
But the addition to what you're saying, what I'm saying, is that, people would not intentionally do stupid, awful things. So when they're doing those things, if we only see it in this negative light, we're being mindless, right? So if we simply ask, how could that behavior that's driving me crazy make sense? And you could even ask the person, or you could just assume it makes some sense. But being evaluative is very mindless. Judging other people is very mindless. What happens if you're used to a lifetime of negatively judging other people, then you tend to judge yourself negatively, which is not good either, because your behavior made sense, even though you don't remember why you did what you did. So I'm gullible. I really am. It's amazing how gullible I am. And you might say to me, you're so damn gullible. I say, yeah, and we both look at my behavior. I can't believe I did that. I can't believe, and I'm going to try to change, but I'm never going to be successful, because going forward, my intention is not to be gullible. Nobody gets up in the morning and says, today I'm going to be obnoxious, aggressive, rude. So when they're doing these things, why are they doing it? Because to them, it can be explained in a very different way. All of the facts. All right, so you have behavior that looks negative can also be positive. You have, no matter what the fact is, that it's only sometimes true. Science only gives us probabilities, it doesn't give us absolutes. And the other aspect of this, that if you can master this, the two of you are going to have spectacular lives, which is, events are neither positive nor negative. Events don't cause stress. What causes stress is the view you take of the event. Right? So if you take a negative, awful, this is going to be terrible view, obviously you're going to feel stressed. If you turn it around and you say, how might this thing actually be a good thing? And then you'd be in the position that I am, you can make all the decisions because I'm going to be happy no matter what. And that happiness comes from engaging. All you need to do is notice. Now, we did this study that was kind of fun. We took people who hated all sorts of activities. One of them was women who hated football. And we had one group watch a football game, and they hate it. Another group, we say, notice one new thing about the football game. Another group, notice 3 new things. And the final group, notice 6 new things. The more you notice, the more you like the thing you're noticing. So you don't have to wait for a major, in school. You don't have to wait for a boyfriend or girlfriend. You don't have to wait for a sport to capture you. All you need to do to get engaged is notice things about it. And then you get pulled in. And then the neurons are firing and you're excited.
This is something that while we were preparing for this podcast with you, I just wrote my SAT exam this past week, and it's not my first SAT, so I was like, how can I get a better score? And so I decided, based off what I heard from some of your previous interviews and podcasts, was I was going to be really excited about the SAT, and I was going to find myself interested in every written and reading comprehension question and math question. And I obviously haven't gotten the score back yet, but I felt so confident and competent during that test in comparison to how I've...
And you enjoyed it. Yeah, anything can be enjoyed. What scares us is not the activity, but what if you screwed up? All right, you screwed up, that can be a good thing. How can it be a good thing? Well, you'll take the test again. It'll be a good thing because everybody won't expect you to be a little genius. That there are people who, if they don't get into Harvard, they're heartbroken. But it's a stressful place for a lot of people. And so if you didn't get the SATs you wanted, and that meant you couldn't go to Harvard, you'd go to some other good school, you'd be top of the class, you'd be happy and stress-free. Nice life.
Exactly.
There's a positive to every negative, and I feel like oftentimes a lot of us get caught in this trap of being like, oh, this negative experience happened to me, and I'm just trying to move on. But what I find just sometimes helpful is kind of reflecting back on that and saying, what positive experience, in hindsight, looking back, I know this wasn't the best feeling to have, it wasn't the most pleasant experience, but what I learned from that and what was something good that came out of it, because there's something good that comes out of everything.
Yeah, so this is probably ridiculous, but let me share it with you. So when I was in 5th grade, I started going out with Mitch Farber, who was in 6th grade. He was gorgeous. This was a real coup. Okay. Then I remember this all took place at a roller skating rink. It's amazing how vivid the images are. Then Mitch broke up with me, and I was heartsick. Okay. Now, the reason that was such a good thing was that I tried to inquire why. Why did you break up with me? And it was because I was better than he was in kickball. Now, the reason that that's such a good thing is it set me on a course for my whole life that when things happen, the reasons they happen are not because you're not good enough. You know, you never know why they're happening. And so if you are honest and do your best, do it full out, it almost doesn't matter what happens. You know, that you can have the kind of life that you want. If you're faking it, that's a whole different story.
That's amazing. It's a great story, and I think that it's very relatable, especially to a lot of teenagers
Exactly.
out there who often internalize a lot of feelings. But while we were, again, preparing for this podcast, we came across your study of men in a community where you simulated their younger years and they lived and acted like they were younger, and through the study, you found that their health improved and they, in a sense, became younger, again, showing how our mind and our body are connected.
Yeah, it was not connected. No. I mean, okay, so many years ago, well before you were even an idea, no less born, people believed, and they weren't aware that they had this belief, it just was implicit that you had a mind and a body. Now, the problem with that is, how do you get from this mind, something immaterial, something fuzzy, to something real, material, the body? And nobody could answer that question, but everybody knew on some level. You know, did you ever see somebody vomiting and all of a sudden you feel like you're going to vomit yourself? Nothing's happening to you. It's all in your mind, right? Or you're walking down the street and a leaf blows and all of a sudden you get startled and your pulse, increases and so on, until you say, oh, it was just a leaf. All right, so we've all had the experience of our minds affecting our bodies, but seeing them as separate. So now, with the study you just mentioned that I'll talk about for a minute, the counterclockwise study, I first put out there, instead of seeing the mind and the body as two separate things, we want to see it as a single unit. If you do that, wherever you're putting your mind, you're necessarily putting your body. Now, people, again, you know, I've been doing this work for so long and they still don't know what mindfulness means. Now, you know, so I've made some headway. They don't think of mind-body dualism. They think mind and body are connected, but if they're connected, you have the same problem. How are they connected? How do you get this fuzzy thing connected to this material thing? The problem goes away when you see it as a single unit. Right. So the study we're talking about was the first test of this. We retrofitted a retreat so that it seemed as if it was 20 years earlier. We had old men live there for a week as if they were their younger selves. So they talked about past events as if they were just unfolding, and so on. Okay, so for them, everything was 20 years earlier. And it was amazing. Their vision improved, their hearing improved, their memory, their strength, and they looked noticeably younger. Your friends might enjoy, the people listening to this, to Google The Simpsons Go to Havana, because they talk about the study on that program, which is cute. Anyway, that was the first of many studies, and each of the studies shows us that we have enormous control over our health. Now, a moment before we started to talk about mind-body unity, I was showing you that we have enormous control over our happiness. You know, that you can't be happy if you're a robot. You have to be actively noticing. How do you actively notice? Well, if you know you don't know, then you're going to actively notice. When you experience things that feel bad, you say, no, things themselves are not good or bad. It's our minds that make them that way. So we have to undo a lot of that bad thinking. Right? So we can control our happiness. We can control our health. There's a lot there to learn. The fun thing of all of this is that it's easy. Not only that, but when you're actively noticing something, it's energy begetting. You have more energy. It's easy and it's fun. It's what you're doing when you're having fun.
I mean, that study is incredible.
amazing.
And I love it, and I think it's something that everyone needs to hear, and I love that The Simpsons included
That's
that. That's
so awesome.
Well, do you know the chambermaid study? That was the next one in that series.
That one is amazing. We just wanted to take a quick pause from today's interview and tell you about how you can bring a small bit of happiness to your home. This is our game that Anastasia and I have designed, Mission's Small Bits of Happiness, and it's got 100 unique fun things to do to feel happier daily so that you can build happy habits, connect with your family and friends, and learn what brings you happiness all from your home. Anastasia, pick a card. There's activities, conversation starters, reflection prompts, and more.
Okay. Listen to something new. Try a new genre of music, or ask your friends for their song recommendations, or try Googling music genres. I guess this will also count for if we listen to a new podcast tonight.
Totally. We're gonna have to check one out. But each card features your mission because there's 100 missions to happiness. It only takes 66 days to build a habit. So this way you've got an ample amount of things to do to build happy habits. It tells you why doing this activity will make you feel happier, because did you know that learning and trying something new boosts our confidence, gives us new skills, and makes us happier? Plus, whenever applicable, which it is on most cards, a QR code that will bring you to a recipe, a playlist, an activity, or anything else. Even facts about why this activity makes you happy in more of long-form content style.
All right, let's get back to the interview.
But before we go, you can grab your own Mission Small Bits of Happiness in the show notes.
So we take chambermaids. These are the women who clean hotel and motel rooms. And the first thing we do is just ask them how much exercise do they get. Oddly, they don't think they're getting exercise because they think exercise is what you do after work, and they're doing so much exercise during work that they can't be bothered after work to do anything but rest. Okay, so then we simply divide them into two groups, and we teach one group that their work is exercise. Making a bed is like working at this machine at the gym, and so on. So you have two groups. The only difference is one group thinks their work is exercise, the other group doesn't. They're not eating any differently from each other. One group isn't working harder than the other. But just by changing their mindset, the group that now sees their work as exercise lost weight. There was a change in waist to hip ratio, body mass index, and their blood pressure came down just from changing their minds.
It's incredible.
And yeah, no, there's so many of them. I mean, we have a study where we inflict a wound and you're in front of a clock. And unbeknownst to you, the clock is rigged. So it's going twice as fast as real time, half as fast as real time, or real time. The wound heals based on your perception of time, whatever that clock is telling you. People in a sleep lab, they wake up, the clock, I'm big on clocks, the clock has been rigged, so it tells you got 2 hours more sleep than you got, 2 hours fewer, or the amount of sleep that you got. All of their psychology, cognitive processing, biology follows the perceived amount of sleep. So when that clock says that you slept enough, they get up and they feel great. Even if they slept enough, the clock says, oh, you didn't get much sleep, they walk around spaced out all day.
That's amazing how much
Yes.
control we have over not only our
And
happiness,
also-
but our health, our relationships. Like really, if we want something enough and we position our mindset to have that perception, we can feel happier, we can live a healthier life, we can feel more energized. It's all so much within our control, especially for teens who often feel like we don't have control, we can't make all our decisions for ourselves. Well, actually,
right.
we do.
And to recognize that all this naturally follows by just accepting that it's okay not to know, that you can't know.
That's incredible.
I mean, you have
Yeah.
done some absolutely amazing studies. Which one did you think is your favorite, or the one that has stuck out to you the most?
I don't know. I've gotten so much attention from this counterclockwise study that, probably that one. But the very first nursing home study I did, so we went and, we're in a nursing home, and at this time, you have everybody looking, they're in their wheelchairs, they look half dead, very depressing, right? And so we thought that part of the reason this was going on was that they didn't have anything to do. They weren't making any choices, they really weren't living, even though they were still breathing. So what we did was we encouraged them to make decisions for themselves. We gave them a plan to take care of. They chose which night to see a movie and so on. We got them engaged. Then we came and we took our measures, and the study worked fine. We went back 18 months later and found that those people who we gave these mindful decision-making exercises to lived longer. And so that was probably the beginning of all of it for me. I mean, it's one thing, when someone says they're happier, or they can run, I don't know, 2 seconds faster, or whatever it is, but living longer. How could it be that your thoughts are and that was the very first study that led me to the mind-body unity. I'll tell you something that's fun. So, well before I was in graduate school, I was married when I was very young. It was crazy, but times were different then. And we went to Paris on our honeymoon. And we're in this restaurant, and I order a mixed grill. On the mixed grill is pancreas. I say to my then husband, which of these is the pancreas? He points to something. I eat everything else with gusto. Now the moment of truth. Can I get myself to eat the pancreas? I don't know why I thought being married meant I had to be able to eat everything, which was now I was all sort of, also sophisticated and whatever. I started eating it, and I literally get sick. He starts laughing. Not a good thing, even later in a marriage, but certainly not on your honeymoon. I say, why are you laughing? He says, because that's chicken. You ate the pancreas a long time ago. So, that was the beginning of the mind-body unity. I had that experience, but it sort of was dormant. I ran that first study in the nursing home, didn't understand, and then eventually came to the idea of mind-body unity and the first counterclockwise study, which was the first test of mind-body unity, was very exciting because there was going to be a major motion picture made with Jennifer Aniston playing me. It didn't end up happening, but I got to meet her, and it was fun. There was a short while where I would go to a party with friends, and the movie would come up, and then everybody would be talking about who was going to play them. How'd you get in my movie? But anyway, so there's been more about that, which probably would make it my favorite to answer the question that you asked.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah,
I
that
mean,
is so
Jennifer
cool.
Aniston, she's amazing, and that's so exciting. Even just
amazing.
getting to meet with her, and all your studies just showcase such powerful concepts that I think are easy to implement, tangible to implement. That those two different methods that you talked about, and just accepting the uncertain. And so, to kind of shift a little bit, could you tell us about the scarcity mindset? What is it, and why is it harmful?
Well, things are neither scarce nor plentiful. Things are nothing, right? It's our minds that create these images. So, in my book, The Mindful Body, which was initially a memoir, so there are lots of personal stories. And this is one of the stories I tell there. So I had this very close friend, and I remember I was out shopping, and I came back, and I got these sneakers for sale, and it was a very exciting event for me. And she acted like, I don't know, that I was bragging. And I didn't understand this, and I didn't understand it, and I kept thinking about it, and eventually I realized that because I have a view of the world as plentiful, if I get something and tell you about it, I'm sharing, I'm encouraging you. You want sneakers at this price? Go and get them. Her view of the world was one of scarcity, that there were so few sneakers out there, and all I was saying now was I made the pile even smaller, making it less likely that somebody else could get one. Right? So that also fits in what we were talking about a moment before, about people's behavior makes sense or else they wouldn't do it. Right? And, when you ask yourself these questions, then you don't get hurt. I knew that I wasn't bragging about getting sneakers on sale. That was silly. But it gave me a lens into her life, her mind, which was going to help our friendship at the time. If you believe that something is scarce, so let's look at literally, when people talk about a glass of water that's half empty or half full. If you see it as half full, you go about living. If you see it as half empty, then you're worried you're going to run out of water. All right. So, scarcity keeps you too close to the things that are scarce. You worry about it. You become less generous, and those very things could end up abundant in a short while later. The world, when we have resources of any kind, the resources don't come labeled. Natural resources, scarce resources. These are labels we attach to things. When you think something is scarce, so I paint, and oh my goodness, I'm running out of a particular color. I can go, oh my God, I can't finish the painting, I can't get to the store. It can be a whole big deal. Or I could say, I could create the color by mixing these other colors. Maybe it wasn't the right color to use in the first place. That the thing for which you want to use that scarce thing probably has multiple other ways, other things that could serve that need. You're baking, and you didn't realize it. The recipe calls for a cup of sugar. Oh my gosh, I only have a half a cup. Now, that could be a big deal. Or you can say, what else could I use? I could use honey, I could use molasses, I could make it something savory instead of something sweet. So when you don't have this notion of, when you have a notion of scarcity, you become almost obsessed with whatever that thing is that you think is scarce. When you have a view of the world as plentiful, you just go on in so many different ways, and you can mindfully satisfy your needs for whatever, as with the sugar. You don't need sugar. We don't need whatever it is people are worried about being scarce. There are always alternative ways of meeting that need.
That is so important to realize, I think, especially for youth and for teenagers in today's world where everything is like a trend, and we're looking at our material items to indicate status or wealth or if we're good enough.
Okay, so here, let me intervene and tell you something I think is important. First of all, people, you see, when you're walking around feeling insecure, it's because you think you should know, and that other person is acting as if they know. When you pay attention to what I've already said, you come to this place where your happiness and success will be significantly advanced by being confident but uncertain. Now, people conflate confidence and certainty. I am confident all the time, and I don't know anything for certain. And I know I don't know, and I know you don't know, and I know that finding out is fun. Temporary finding out, because you find something out, it's also going to change. So you should just stand tall and create the condition that you're running away from. I don't know, it'd probably be too hard for me to explain that too well, but if you recognize that nobody knows, and you stand tall, people think you know. And whatever you do will be the thing to do.
Just like looking for opportunities and looking for all the things that are good in our world rather than always searching for the holes and the things that we can focus on that are unhappy. That is very important.
And I find it so fascinating on how your outlook of the world can really shape how you see everything and how everything...
No, it's not that it can, it does. That people don't understand that there's nothing that is absolute. There's nothing that can't be looked at in multiple ways, and when you recognize you can look at it, whatever it is, in multiple ways, and some of those ways you're looking at it make you feel good and make you feel smart and attractive and successful, and some of those ways make you feel sad, scared, and why choose to look at them that way?
Exactly. And when you're choosing to look at things through this positive perspective, through this perspective of abundance, you're more likely to do things that make you happy. You're going to spend time with people who make you happy. And you're going to curate these experiences. Just like you said earlier today, you know, like even when you got broken up with in elementary school, like what good comes from everything is going to appear to you rather than all the negative things that are also happening at the same time.
Yeah, well, no, but the thing, okay, so what you're doing, and many people, so there are some people who believe there are good things and there are bad things. The next level is what you were just stating, where there are things that have both good parts to it and bad. I'm not saying that. Mine is yet different from both of those. I'm saying that that very thing that's good is also bad. It's not that it has these 3 good things about it, these 3 bad things, so what you should do is focus on these 3 good things. I'm saying each one of those things is really nothing independent of the way we look at it.
All right. So for our final question, we want to ask, what is one piece of advice that you would give to your teenage self?
That it's fine not to know. In fact, it's mindless to think you do know.
That's
I
beautiful.
think that's really great because, you know, oftentimes as teenagers, we think that everyone else, like we mentioned before, knows everything and we're the only ones who don't.
But being mindful and present
Totally.
and focusing on, you know, the mindset of abundance and everything that we've talked about today is really profound, and it's definitely shaped the way that Anastasia and I, ever since we came across your research, have been looking at things. So thank you so much.
No, it was my pleasure. Very nice meeting both of you.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Hack Your Happiness, and thank you so much to Dr. Langer for joining us today.
She is an absolutely iconic psychologist and professor, and Anastasia and I think that, you know, her studies and her research have truly changed the way that we go about our daily lives, and we hope that this has positively affected and helped you as well. Anastasia, what was your biggest takeaway from today?
I think one of my biggest takeaways is definitely that you need to be conscious and also like questioning things, but not like in a negative way, but saying,
Not cynical.
not being like, is this actually true? But being like, you know, is there more that can happen?
Yeah.
How about you, Mercedes?
One of my biggest takeaways from Dr. Langer today is the importance of really truly finding the benefit of every situation. Like, yes, there's a negative thing that happens, but that exact negative thing, if we look at it with a positive perspective lens, is also a good thing. And like she made very clear, it's not that there's good things and bad things happening, it's that the good is the bad. It's one and the same, and it's what we get from every situation. So why don't we just get the good thing instead of the bad thing? It'll allow us to be happier and literally healthier individuals. If you enjoyed this week's episode of Hack Your Happiness with Dr. Ellen Langer, we think you would love our interview with Dr. Cal Newport, a professor at Georgetown University and also a New York Times bestselling author. He talks to us all about hacks for productivity and deep thinking and deep work.
And I said, wait a second, I have tools for this. And so I began to apply some of the ideas that were commonplace in the business world for time management and scheduling and organization. I started to apply that to how I approached my work as a student. And my grades got really good. And I suddenly was doing very good in college. I wasn't staying up late. I felt like I was studying less than my friends. And I decided at that point, you know, I should probably write a book about this.
You can listen to this episode now. It's linked in the show notes.
If you enjoyed this week's episode of Hack Your Happiness, please leave us a 5-star review from wherever you're listening. It really helps us out and we really appreciate it.
Also, we should join our happiness family. It's completely free. We would love to have you, and that way you'll never miss another episode. And you can join the family by following Hack Your Happiness on whichever podcast listening platform you're on now.
See you next time.